Season of the Deep just launched and Bungie added a lot of new guns, and some fishing, which somehow gives you these guns. Not sure exactly how that one makes sense, but hey, at least it's very relaxing. So here's the weapons that are actually worth farming for. And first, let's address the potential big hype moment for veteran players at the start. Spare Rations is back. This was one of the best hand cannons in the game a few years ago, and then it became a victim of sunsetting and is kinda left in the past. So let's take a look at the new perk pool. What do we have here? No rangefinder, no explosive payload either. I hate to break it to you, but those stats are just not that good for a 140. If you compare it with the IS Luna, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. And with not that many good perks to help it out, it's kind of a mid gun at best. It's definitely not the king of hand cannons like it used to be. It does have one trick up its sleeve though, and that would be slide shot with focus fury to get some easier progress towards the perk. Outside of maybe taking opening shot, that's about all we have going for this new version of Spare Rations. So this one's a bit disappointing, but we are going to have a few other hand cannons on the list which are a little bit more interesting. Centrifuge is the new seasonal exotic and it's a 450 RPM auto rifle. For PvP, that's really not a good thing. At closer ranges, you're going to get destroyed by SMGs even after the nerfs, and at longer ranges, you're still going to lose out to pulses and scouts. But for PvE, those explosions are really cool. Especially since they blind enemies, I think this auto could be pretty cool for higher end content. Having the blinding utility on a primary weapon means you're not going to have to use something like a grenade launcher to blind all the ads, but you do have to give up your exotic slot though, so I'm not sure how useful this thing's really going to end up being. We have two new 120 RPM hand cannons, and the first one is Combined Action. This one is really nostalgic for me because it reminds me of the old Home for the Lost, which was another 120 with the same Dire Promise model, which was kind of a niche pick back in year 1. Home for the Lost had the pre-nerfed version of Quick Draw, which made it really nice feeling even though it was a high impact frame. This season we got Combined Action, which is an ARC 120 with Kill Clip. And that's basically it in a sense, but it's also a really good thing. We haven't had an Energy 120 with Kill Clip in a long time, so this one's a really welcome sight for any PvP player out there. The stats are kinda meh, but 120s that have Kill Clip pretty much never have great stats anyway. And besides Kill Clip, there's actually another role which might be kind of interesting to you if you're into those trickier builds. You can get Hipfire Grip together with Offhand Strike to give you some serious hipfire accuracy, range, and consistency. After a kill, your hipfire range is going to be extended to about 47 meters. That's basically pulse rifle range. It almost feels like you're playing a rangier version of The Last Word that kills a bit slower, and it's a lot of fun. I'm not sure how reliable this really is for higher end gameplay, but it's definitely a fun setup to try. Speaking of hand cannons, here's one that made it on the list just by being really easy to get. That would be the Apocal integration. You get this one just by completing the new Strand quest, and it's a fixed roll. Regardless of how this thing performs, you have to like it just for how it looks with the suppressor. In actual gameplay though, it's decent, but for PvP my main complaint is that it really lacks range. And in PvE, it's nice to have Incandescent for solar builds, but you do already have the Callus mini tool that sort of does the same job a bit better. Still, it is a nice option to have though, because the only other Incandescent hand cannon we have is the Zaloli's Bane from the King's Fall raid. Outlast is a returning pulse rifle from the Reckoning. I was debating whether I should even mention this one, but the perks are really good, so I do think it deserves a spot on the list. See, my main problem is the really bad stability. That's a bummer on pulse rifles because it's going to make you work extra hard to get those kills. Its other stats aren't the best either, mostly because it's an outdated gun, but with rangefinder in the left column, you can get some really respectable damage drop off with this pulse. If you've never had a good Energy 540 for PvP, definitely try this one out because you might really like it. We just launched our new Ember Edge mousepads on Amazon. To celebrate, we're doing a 20% off coupon that you can apply that's only available for the next 48 hours after this video goes live. If you decide to try one out and you like the pad, it would be incredibly helpful if you take a second to leave us a review to help out other gamers. You can check them out by visiting the link in the description. Different Times is up next, and if you haven't had a chance to play much of the new season yet, just know that we got both the old Reckoning guns along with new Taken versions of them to play with. This one is the Taken version of the Outlast, and it's a Strand 540 RPM pulse. So looking at the perks, what is this thing? Invisible Hand. Missing shots gives you stability. So this perk rewards you for being bad at the game. I'm not really a big fan of this weapon philosophy. I think it's better to reward players for doing things right instead of covering up their mistakes. Looking at you, Revoker. Disregarding that perk though, the rest of it's actually pretty interesting and could prove to be very good for different game modes. For PvP, the stats are a little bit weak again, but I do think you should be able to work with them considering we have both Moving Target and Head Seeker on this gun. This thing could be a very powerful pulse, so I'll definitely give it my best try to get a crafted one and try it out. While I'm speaking about the Taken guns, let me mention Targeted Redaction. This is the new Void 120 RPM hand cannon and it's a big problem right now. If you've been living under a rock, let me catch you up to speed. This gun gets the new perk called Collective Action, which gives you a damage boost just for picking up those elemental drops. Think of things like Ionic Traces, Stasis Shards, Void Breaches, and that kind of thing. Well, it turns out that you can easily produce a lot of these elemental drops just by running Behemoth Titan. By running Tectonic Harvest, you can break your crystals to get a lot of these shards, which then you can pick up for a damage boost. Pair this with Elemental Charge and 2 Void Siphon mods and suddenly you have a 2-tapping beast in your hands. This thing is really broken right now, especially since you can get all that damage resistance from Stasis. I'm pretty sure this is going to get nerfed one way or another, so let's actually look at the other perks to see what's up for grabs. Well-rounded in the left column seems to be pretty useful, and in the right there's Keep Away, which is one of the best consistency and range perks out there in the game. Explosive Payload is also a great choice here. You're very likely to get the pattern for this one just by playing the new season, so once you do, try it out because you might like it, especially since it has that famous Spare Rations model. Ah yes, sniper rifles, my favorite. This season, Bungie gave us one of the best snipers we've ever seen, but locked it behind 3 weekly drops for the comp playlist. This works just like Rose did last season. The gun I'm talking about is the Mercurial Overreach, which is a 90 RPM arc sniper and it almost ticks all of the boxes. 40 zoom stat? Check. Clean model? Check. Massive aim assist? Check. Snapshot and opening shot? Double check. High stability for basically non-existent flinch? Checkmate. Well, okay, there is one big downside, and that's that the reticle is very small. I play at 1440p on a 27-inch monitor and I can barely see this thing. I really hope it's just a mistake on Bungie's end and they're gonna patch it soon. Otherwise, I might need a new prescription for some stronger glasses. In any case, this is by far the weapon I'm most excited about this season, and it's gonna have me reluctantly playing the comp playlist until I get my perfect roll. For those of you who have awful RNG just like me, you might also have to resort to some coping mechanisms. This sniper is exactly that, the sole survivor. It has 40 zoom, it's arc flavored, it's adaptive, and it's got that in common with the Overreach. But that's pretty much where the good news stops. Unfortunately, it has this awful reticle. Okay, I'm half joking, I'm just not really a fan of these chevron style reticles, but many of my friends absolutely love them, so I guess it's just a matter of personal preference. Either way, I'm going to be sticking to my beloved until I get a god roll Overreach, but if you don't already have a good energy sniper for PvP, you could definitely pick this thing up with Eye of the Storm and Snapshot. For PvE, this one actually might be a decent choice as well because it comes with Field Prep and Focus Fury. This will allow you to easily get a damage boost while giving you some extra reload speed and reserves. Next up we have Randy's Throwing Knife. This one drops from the Crucible and its perk pool is stacked. It's a rapid fire scout in the kinetic slot, and once upon a time it used to be a pinnacle weapon. And now I guess Bungie has reached the pinnacle of their creativity for Destiny because they just decided to reintroduce it as a basic legendary drop. Jokes aside though, they did really do it justice and you have a few great perks to choose from for both PvP and PvE. Most importantly, there are a lot of ways to boost the damage of Randy's to ensure that sweet 4 headshot kill for PvP. Box breathing is in the right column, which I think is the first time it's ever been on a rapid fire scout. If you land your first shot as a headshot, you'll be able to 3 crit one body anyone running less than 80 resilience, and for higher resiliences you can just land 4 headshots. I feel like this is a much better proposition than something like box breathing on a precision scout. The rapid fires are just better by default, so adding box breathing makes them really good if you can afford to hard scope them. You see, one of the big problems with box breathing on the 180s is that you're forced to play more of a defensive playstyle, otherwise you just have a really bad gun. I think Randy's can alleviate a lot of the pain points here, and I would definitely recommend keeping a good roll for PvP. There's also another fun perk in the right column being Cascade Point. It's a little tricky to get it to work, especially since you need to use a different gun first, but it can make for some really fun clips. In the left column, of course we have some of the best consistency perks in the game like Rapid Hit and Zen Moment, and Perpetual Motion is also really nice. I would recommend staying away from perks that reduce aim assist though, because on a scout rifle you really need every point of aim assist you can get. And to be honest, that's true for every gun, but I guess especially so for a scout rifle. We have a new seasonal ritual weapon, and that would be the Last Rite Scout Rifle. This thing is just a legendary version of the Dead Man's Tale, but it's really a good one. The 120 RPM archetype is great for getting out big chunks of damage over long ranges. I'm really excited by the perk combo of Focus Fury and Reconstruction even for PvP. Getting some extra free damage is always a nice thing. So should you use this thing over the Dead Man's Tale? Well, for PvP, not really to be honest. The hipfire of Dead Man's Tale is extremely powerful, and passing up on it does make the gun a lot worse. But if you want to use an exotic special weapon like Duality for example, then you're going to have to accept this legendary version. Pressurized Precision is our first strand fusion rifle. This thing comes from the Iron Banner, so it only gets PvP perks. We're not going to get to fully experience this thing until Iron Banner's around, but looking at the perks, it's definitely not a bad one. It features the adaptive frame and it has high impact reserves for some extra damage, which allows it to kill it with just 5 bolts. This can make it a very consistent option. In the left column, Firmly Planted is still a great perk despite the nerfs a while back. And unfortunately, Bungie didn't give us Iron Grip, which I think would have been really powerful but maybe a bit broken on a fusion rifle like this one. We also have some reprised versions of the Last Wish weapons. These are now craftable and you can get some pretty insane rolls on them. Even though the Chattering Bone is a 450 RPM pulse, I have to say Bungie, you really outdid yourselves on this one. Rampage and Kill Clip, both enhanced, sign me up. All of the other perks are looking really good too. This pulse might prove to be a worthy contender for both PvP and PvE even though it's in the worst archetype. Transfiguration is another one that can get the legendary combo of Kill Clip and Rampage. I'm not sure if it can 2-tap anymore, but the high damage output can never be a bad thing. Nation of Beasts is a 140 RPM hand cannon with very good stats and excellent perks including Perpetual Motion and Explosive Payload, and it's also a great pick for PvE with both Volt Shot and Dragonfly at the same time. The Supremacy can get Snapshot and Opening Shot at the same time now. It's a 40 zoom, 140 RPM sniper in the kinetic slot. Being a 140 makes it not quite the best for PvP since it deals such low body shot damage, but if you can land your headshots, it's definitely a fun one to use. This was my favorite sniper in the game back in Forsaken, and I'm really excited to take it for a spin again once I can craft it. Apex Predator's rework introduced some really nice perks, making it possibly one of the best rockets for PvE. It's the first time we've seen reconstruction on a rocket launcher, which is a perk that slowly reloads your weapon to double the capacity. On a rocket launcher, this means 2 rockets in the magazine instead of just 1. That together with something like bait and switch is very powerful for boss DPS. Also, there's some common perks like Demolitionist in the left column and Explosive Light in the right. Considering it's craftable now, you definitely don't want to miss out on this rocket launcher. I also wanted to mention some of the new dungeon weapons that seem really interesting. I haven't had much time to grind for these yet, so I'm just going to go off what I've heard so far from the community. There's a new Stasis wave frame grenade launcher up for grabs called New Pacific Epitaph. It has Demolitionist, which is always really great to get your grenades back faster. Even if the other perks aren't the greatest, I would still definitely try to get this one because it opens up a lot of cool build making potential. Besides that, there's also a new aggressive frame solar SMG called No Survivors. It's quite a bit like the Immortal with a lot of range and target lock, so that's a great pickup for PvP. With Incandescent, it's also a really great SMG for PvE builds. There's a Stasis rocket launcher called Cold Comfort that can get Envious Assassin, but also has the new Dungeon's Intrinsic perk. This gives you an emergency reload for finishing a combatant. You can then stack these to get up to 4 rockets back to back for some really high DPS. And of course, the new exotic trace rifle, the Navigator, is strand flavored and seems like a really fun weapon for support players. If you want a big hit of nostalgia, go check out my video on 43 weapons that define the Destiny 2 PvE meta. It's linked on screen and in the description.